be stepping out of my comfort zone and attempting to make something that I still haven't gotten the hang of just yet. Hello macarons, my old enemy. Are you going to finally cooperate with me for once and actually come out looking perfect? Or are you going to be just as stubborn as always and continue to come out looking like crap? Well, I guess we're going to have to find out together now, aren't we? Stick around to find out. Things are about to get very interesting in a minute. Or very depressing, depending on how things actually turn out. Hi, my name is Tiffany and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be making some pumpkin spice macarons. Now, how do they look exactly? Well, you're going to have to stay to the end of the video to find out. Now, if you're not already subscribed to my channel, but you are quite intrigued as to what these mystery macarons could possibly look like underneath, as well as how they taste, please smash that like button and go ahead and click the subscribe button and ring that notification bell to be notified whenever I make a new baking tutorial or short. I make baking content that's for beginners and experienced bakers alike, so if that sounds like you, please do stick around. You may be quite surprised to what I have to offer you, and who knows, you might even learn something from me too. Today's pumpkin spice latte macarons is based off a drink that I used to enjoy quite often when I would go to Starbucks. And guys, I couldn't even tell you when last I set foot in there. Like, I swear to God, like the pandemic has seriously messed with the flow of time, and I couldn't even tell you like, if it was 2 years ago or 10 years ago. It's just, oh my God, like time just feels the same to me, you know what I mean? Seriously, time needs to slow way down and just chill out a bit because it's just moving too fast for me to cope, and I feel so old already, man. Like 2 years feels like 10, like yikes. Well, yeah, besides it being pre-pandemic, since it was the last time I had set foot inside of a Starbucks, today's macaron recipe features your typical macaron shell, which is made using the Italian method, which makes for a more stable macaron, as well as cleaner looking feet. And then the shells are then dusted with a little pumpkin spice infused cocoa powder, and then it is filled with a little white chocolate pumpkin espresso ganache in the center to mimic the pumpkin coffee base that's on the inside of the latte. And then it is surrounded with a little cinnamon German buttercream, which mimics the whipped cream that goes on top. And then it is drizzled with a little salted caramel sauce and sprinkled with a little bit of fleur salt for a macaron that not only tastes like your favorite latte, but it tastes much creamier as well. Unfortunately, macarons are not for the faint at heart, and as such, it is for the advanced baker. And so if you don't feel confident about your skills when it comes to making macarons, then I suggest you check back in a few days. We'll be posting an even simpler recipe which features the same great flavors as today's recipe, and it's also coincidentally based on another treat that you can find at your local Starbucks. Yeah, I should probably take that as a hint to leave now, so bye everyone! Yeah, I'm just joking, of course. I wouldn't just leave you hanging around without a tutorial now, would I? Would I? Take that at what you will about my skills when it comes to making macarons. But yeah, I'm just gonna truck on through and hopefully everything works out this time and it comes out good for once. And if these macarons end up looking like failures, please don't laugh at me. Like seriously, I already got enough of that at school as it was, and it was really bad on me, so I don't need that anymore at home. So just please go a little easy on me, okay? Like I'm trying to do my best here. So if you're feeling confident about your skills and you're up for a little challenge, then won't you stick around and let's go make some macarons? Yeah, woo! Let's do this. I have faith in you. We can do this. Let's do this. I'm sorry, were you expecting a little cutaway with a little voiceover in which I tell you exactly how to make these macarons? Oh no, honey. Today we actually are making these macarons live and in person, baby. Let's do this. At least now you get to see firsthand exactly how bad I am at making macarons, but fingers crossed that this particular batch turns out perfect for once. Here's hoping. Oh, and one more disclaimer before we begin. I'll make it short, I promise. I understand that this tutorial is quite long and detailed, and as such, If you have a very short attention span and you're not into that, I've also included some timestamps in the description box down below, so you can just jump ahead to where you need to go whenever you are making these macarons. And if that's still not helpful enough for you, don't worry. I also have a short version of this recipe coming out tomorrow, which basically sums up the recipe in like a minute or so you can also just do that as well if you like. But I do suggest that you stay for a bit and give this tutorial a chance, since there's quite a bit to learn here about macarons and why we are doing things the way we are making them. Which reminds me, you'll also need a scale for this recipe, since there's no spoons or cups allowed here. Well, maybe except for the spices? Now before you begin, you want to make sure that you have 60 grams of fresh egg whites ready to go, and that they have been sitting at room temperature for at least 24 hours before adding it to your macaronage. The reason why we are doing this is so that the macarons bake up much more stable. Now, there are some recipes out there that actually calls for the aged egg whites to be used for the meringue and the fresh egg whites to be added to the macaronage. And the science behind this is that aged egg whites have a tendency to be more acidic and have less moisture in them, and so by using it to whip up for the meringue, not only does it have more elasticity in them, but the meringue is also stronger as well, thanks to the extra acids found in aged egg whites. Now, the way I was taught at school, we did the exact opposite, which was to use the aged egg whites for the macaronage and use the fresh egg whites to be used for the meringue. And since I'm used to making macarons using that method, that's the way we are going to be making today's macarons. Next, we're going to prep our macarons by drawing little circles on some parchment paper using a 2-inch round cookie cutter and a pencil. So I'm just going to prep those right now. Make sure you space them around ½ an inch apart so that the macarons don't spread next to each other and they don't end up kissing, because you don't want them to kiss. And if you have a silicone mat with like a macaron stencil on it, you can definitely use that instead. In fact, I think that might be better actually, so that the macarons don't actually stick to the pan. So you're better off using a silicone mat if you do have one, especially with the stencil on it. Make sure to flip it over when you're done so that you don't get like pencil marks on your macarons. Next, we're going to take care of our almond flour. So I have here 150 grams of almond flour. I'm just going to add it to this baking tray and spread it out nice and flat so that it can toast evenly. The reason why we're toasting the almond flour is so that we can give the macarons a little bit of extra flavor to them. And then we toast the almond flour at a 350 degree Fahrenheit oven or 177 degrees Celsius for around 7 to 10 minutes, or until they're completely browned through. It's been around 15 minutes, so I'm just going to check on it. Yeah, this oven is kind of cold, so keep that in mind. Your times will vary. The color is brown, but it can go a bit more brown, so I'm just gonna change it a bit. Another 5 minutes and they should be ready to go. Looks like my almond flour is ready to go. I'm just gonna take it out. And you want to make sure that your almond flour is completely cool before you go to sift it in your macarons. The reason being is because there's a lot of oils that have been released while it's been toasted, and you do not want any grease in your macarons whatsoever, so you just want it to calm down a bit before you sift it. So now that their almond flour has cooled down a bit, we're now going to be sifting them before we sift with the icing sugar. And we're going to be doing this a total of 3 times so that the icing sugar and the almond flour can be just as smooth as possible, and that there's absolutely no chance of lumps entering into our macaron. Again, you don't have to toast your almond flour if you don't want to. I just did it here so that I can have extra flavor to the macarons. And to be honest, I'm kind of regretting it a bit, since when you do toast it, there's a higher chance of these clumps coming in, even after you cool it, so just bear in mind. You might want to do this in a food processor so that it comes out more smoothly and you get less of these lumps. And let's waste it here. And then sift in your icing sugar. This is also around 150 grams of icing sugar. Just remember that when you're doing the Italian method, you want to make sure that your almond flour and your icing sugar is the exact same weight. And mix together. And sift together for another 2 more times. Woo! Sift, sift, sift. Sift, sift, sift. Sift that booty. Sift that booty. Sift, 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 sift. God, I must be so silly, aren't I? If you have any stray lumps of almond flour left back in your sifter, just discard them because we really want our macaronage to be as smooth as possible, and these lumps will prevent it from being smooth and will cause problems later on when you're making macarons. Now once your icing sugar and almond flour have been thoroughly sifted, we're going to add in our 8 egg whites into this one, as well as 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract and half a teaspoon of almond extract or almond emulsion, which is what I have here. And emulsion tends to have a more potent almond flavor, so that is why I'm using it here. And we just mix to combine. You only want to gently mix this so that the almond flour is nice and moist, but you don't want to over mix it, or else when you go to add in your meringue later on, you risk it being over mixed, and so it ends up being runny instead of like a perfect lava consistency. This is what we're trying to aim for. Now normally you would add in your food coloring to your meringue, but because I don't want to risk deflating it, I'm instead going to be adding the color into the macaronage. I'm going to add about 2 to 3 drops of this. And you always want to add a bit more color than you need, because once you add your meringue, it's going to end up being a bit lighter than expected. So it's better to err more on the darker side so that it's closer to the color of the pumpkin. And you just mix it in. So slowly, carefully. You don't want to overmix your macaronage. And now it's time to make the meringue. So I'm adding in 150 grams of super fine granulated sugar. And this is the part where the chefs love to critique me on. Like, they'd always tell me that the sugar is off in the macarons and that is why they have failed. And I'm just like, no miss. I'm pretty sure I added in the correct amount of sugar into these macarons. And this is the proof here that I am definitely adding in the right amount of sugar. So if today's macarons fail, it is definitely not because of the sugar levels. It is something else. Perhaps a macaronage, perhaps? Yeah. See? 151. So it's definitely not the sugar. And to this, we're going to be adding 38 grams of water. Careful, careful. Perfect. Just pour it on in there. And mix to combine. So for the meringue, we're going to be using 60 grams of fresh egg whites. And just add it to this bowl. And the yolks will be put aside in this other bowl that I have here. Let's just hope that I don't get any yolk in this. If you have an egg yolk separator, you can definitely use it here. It'd be much less messier that way. And you don't have to worry about getting yolks everywhere. Shit. Oh, oh, careful. Yes, I did it. I did it. Oh, thank God. Just know that if you even get a single drop of egg yolk in this, that it's game over and that you have to start entirely from scratch. Thank God we won't have to do that here, because Lord knows just how expensive eggs are these days. I'm now adding in a 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar to add in a bit of acidity to these egg whites. We're especially going to be kneading them in this since these are fresh egg whites. And so the creamer tartar will help add a bit of acidity, which in turn adds in a bit of elasticity to them, which helps them whip up a bit more stronger. Since I don't own a stand mixer, I'm just going to go ahead and whip my egg whites in advance before I get started on the sugar syrup. Start off on low speed to break up the egg whites before increasing it to like medium full speed. Continue to whip them until it's nice and frothy like this, and they're just starts to trail something in the whipping. This means the egg whites are just about to be the same. So this will be like the consistency. And then just push the sugar off the sides of the pot before you begin so that it doesn't crystallize. Push, push, push. So I have the sugar syrup on medium heat, and we're just gonna cook this until we get to around 240 degrees Fahrenheit, which is approximately 116 degrees Celsius or 115, around that neighborhood. But yeah, so it's starting to boil now. So I'm just gonna continue to wipe down the sides with a wet pastry brush so that it doesn't crystallize. It's going really quickly too. Look at that, we're already at 215. I am going to need a little help in pouring this, so I am not sure how exactly I'm going to whip this and pour it at the same time. Here's hoping that it all turns out. At 230 degrees Fahrenheit, and if you had a stand mixer, this is where you would start to whip your egg whites to soft peaks. But because I don't have one, I already did my egg whites in advance, so by the time we hit 240, this is ready to go. And we're at 240 degrees, so this sugar syrup is ready to go. Okay, turn this off. So we're just going to drizzle in very slowly. Continue to whip your meringue until you reach the and when it's done, you should see peaks that look just like this. Nice and stiff. Another way of knowing if your egg whites are ready to go is if you can hold it over your head and it doesn't fall on top of you. Yep, good to go. In 3 installments, we're going to be adding in our meringue into our macaronage, and we're just going to carefully fold it in. You want to make sure that you're folding it in, and at the same time you're beating it at the side of the bowl so that you don't get any hollows or any lumps in your macaron. Do this very gently and be sure not to overmix it, or else your macaronage will become too runny and your macarons will not bake properly. So far so good. It's looking better than last time. Really hope this macaronage works out. Because it's a bit light, I'm just going to add in a few more drops of color here. There we go. And this is where I messed up last time, so just hoping that this time it will turn out. It's looking kind of runny, shit! Oh god, maybe I overmixed it again? Who even knows? They always say that the macaronage is like the hardest part to master, so this is where the majority of mistakes happen. So to test to see if your macaronage is ready, do the figure 8 test. And if it sinks back in within 30 seconds, but not quicker than like 10 seconds, then your macaronage is ready to be piped. It looks like it's sinking less than 10 seconds, so I might have overmixed it again, so fingers crossed that this actually turns out. Pour into a piping bag so that your macarons can be piped. I'm not even going to be bothering using a piping tip with this one since I'm just lazy, so I'm just doing this tipless. Let's see if I can carry this out. Oh my god, there looks like a lot of batter in here. Ooh. Let's hope it's not too runny. Here we go. I think I did too much, so I don't know if it's going to tie properly, so here's hoping. Added an elastic band for extra security, so here's hope this works out. And I'm just going to carefully pipe these out. Just make sure you stop close to the edge, like don't let it fill the entire circle, because when you go to bang these, they will spread a bit. I mean, it seems thick, so let's hope they stay that way. And it actually holds the shape this time and doesn't crack on me. You know, this isn't so bad. Like, I could get used to this. I just really hope that these macarons are the ones. I have a good feeling about these ones, but let's just hope that they are the right ones and they don't crack on me this time. And because my mom doesn't want me to damage the countertops with the banging, I'm going to be instead banging it on a tablecloth. If you have a much sturdier countertop, you can definitely be doing this on the countertop instead of the tablecloth. And I find it's much more accurate so, and you get more air bubbles on the harder surface. Ooh, this one's going to touch. I'll fix that up later. And if you have any air bubbles, just use a toothpick or a paring knife and just gently pop the air bubbles with them. Nice and carefully. Oops. Now I have here 3 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa powder, and I mixed it with 1.5 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice, which is a mix of cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, allspice, ground cloves, and a little pinch of ground black pepper for a little kick. And we're going to be using this to dust over our macaron shells. Then you dust the tops with the cocoa powder. Just nice and gentle. Like, I seriously want to know what would happen if these macarons end up being failures once again. Like, would I get a round of applause from the chefs that would be like, I told you so? I told you your macarons would not even turn out? So yeah, let's hope that these macarons turn out for once and they actually bake up properly. I'm just going to preheat the oven real quickly to 290 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around maybe 140 degrees Celsius or something like that. I'm going to just bake these macarons in the oven for around 15 minutes until they have fully set and the feet have formed. Or at least I hope the feet have formed for once. Fingers crossed that these macarons come out good and not cracked or flat for once. So while the macarons are baking, I'm going to be making the salted caramel sausages on top. So I have in here 200 grams of granulated sugar, which is around a cup in volume. And I'm just going to slowly add it to the pot and let it caramelize before adding the next layer of sugar. Give it a nice little stir. And since this is dry caramel, we don't have to worry about it like crystallizing. So this caramel sauce is guaranteed to be smooth no matter what you do here. We continue to cook this until the sugars start to caramelize. And then we add in our next layer. Looks like the macarons are ready to be taken out. Let's go get them, shall we? How these turned out. Oh dear, no feet. Typical. Let's get a closer look at these failures, shall we? Yes, I know these macarons are looking a little flat. Like, as you can see, there's no feet to be seen around anywhere. But on the plus side, at least it's not as bumpy as my last macarons were. So, this is a start. Like, this is a good step in the right direction. So, We just have to keep working on our macarons and just to make sure that we don't overmix them the next time, right? Well, all hope is lost in the macarons. Let's just hope that the filling doesn't turn out just as disastrous. Looks like it's starting to caramelize a bit, so I'm just going to add in the second layer of sugar. There we go. And mix. To the sugar, I'm going to be adding in 120 grams or around half a cup of heavy cream, as well as 50 grams of dark corn syrup, which is about 3 tablespoons in volume. I'm also going to be adding in a little bit of this hazelnut coffee creamer since I did unfortunately run out of the heavy cream. So I'm just going to be using this to bring the volume up to 120. Feel free to use pumpkin spice coffee creamer if you can find any, as these will go really well with your macarons. Looks like the sugars have completely caramelized, so I'm just going to add in the cream now. There you go. Ooh, hot! Continue to stir this bad boy until the caramel is nice and thick. It looks like we're almost there. We just have to let the cream thicken up a bit more. There we go. The caramel should be nice and thick now. And we're just going to take it off the heat here. To this, we're going to add in 85 grams of salted butter. You can also use unsalted butter. Just remember to add in an extra pinch of salt if you are going to be using unsalted butter. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Half a teaspoon of salt. And mix it all together. Check out this amber colored beauty, you guys. Isn't she beautiful? Beautiful. And we're just going to pour the caramel sauce in this container and allow it to cool before we use it to drizzle over our macarons. Here we go. Perfect. Now let's get started on the German buttercream for the macarons. So to the pot, I'm going to be adding around 60 grams of whole milk. I know this is 2% milk, but still good enough. Okay, 65, still good. Now I'm just going to warm the milk over medium heat until it starts to like boil a bit before I go and temper it with the eggs. And then for the dry ingredients for the custard, I'm adding in 50 grams of granulated sugar, which also equates to a 1/4 cup, but we're not using volume measurements, so try and have a scale in hand. A tablespoon of cornstarch, which is around 8 grams in weight, I believe, and also the only time you're going to be using spoons for this. And 25 grams of an egg. I know this is a whole egg that's being shown here, but I'm just going to whisk this up, and only half of this will be used. The other half you could just put away in the fridge and just add it to an omelette or a scrambled egg, or it's part of a different recipe in the morning or something. 1 whole egg weighs around 50 grams, so just remember it's 25 we're adding here. 26, 28, close enough. And just mix it all together. There we go, nice and creamy, and it's ready to be tempered with the milk. There it is, it's starting to bubble. There you go. Time to temper them. I'm just going to carefully add it to the eggs. You want to do this as slow as you can so that you don't accidentally scramble your eggs. But at the same time, you don't want the milk to be too warm, or else that will also scramble your eggs. So do it as gently and as slowly as possible. Just going to add it back to the pot. Cook it nice and slow. Cook it nice and slow over medium heat for around 3 minutes or until the custard is started to thicken up. Make sure to stir constantly so that you don't get like these big lumps in your custard. You want it as smooth as possible so that your buttercream also remains smooth. And if you have like a spare vanilla bean lying around, it'd be really nice to steep it with the milk to add some extra vanilla flavor to the custard, as well as to give it a little bit of seeds to it. And if you don't have any vanilla beans, you can just easily like use vanilla bean paste if you have any, or just regular vanilla extract will work in a pinch. And it's starting to thicken, so this custard is almost ready to go. Scrape the custard back into the bowl that you were using earlier. Yes, I understand why we're using the same bowl, but I just don't feel like doing a lot of dishes, so I'm just reusing whatever I can. Give it a mix, mix, mix. Make it nice and smooth. We're going to add a teaspoon of vanilla bean paste and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. You're probably wondering where's the cinnamon in this recipe, and the answer is I'm going to add it in later once we have completed buttercream, so that you can get the full cinnamon flavor instead of just adding it into this warm custard. Add some plastic wrap and make sure to press down on the custard so that you don't form a skin on it. There we go. And then we're going to put this in the fridge to chill for about an hour or two until the custard is completely set before we begin our buttercream. So to make the white chocolate espresso ganache for the macaron filling, I'm going to chop up 6 ounces of white chocolate as shown here. 6 ounces is equal to around 170 grams. I know I have around 164 grams shown here exact, but that's still pretty close, right? Chop it up. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you just want it small enough so that you can incorporate with the heavy cream. Nice and smooth. Yes, I'm well aware that my knife skills are absolutely atrocious, but I'm just here to get these white chocolate nice and chopped, coarsely chopped. And right now, I'm just not that concerned about my knife skills. So who really cares if I'm sawing this instead of chopping it like a professional, right? It's the thought that counts, no? And just add it into this bowl here. So I have here 2 ounces of pumpkin puree, which is equal to around 56 or 57 grams. And the reason why we're cooking down the pumpkin puree is so that we not only get rid of the moisture, because we all know that moisture is the enemy of chocolate, but at the same time we're also intensifying the pumpkin flavor. We're also adding in the pumpkin so that it simulates the flavor of pumpkin spice latte, which is exactly what the ganache represents. So we will cook this on medium heat for a few minutes, maybe like 5-7 minutes, or until the pumpkin becomes more matte and has the moisture removed. I think that's pretty matte looking, don't you think? And this is about ready to come off now. Make sure your pumpkin puree is fully cooled before you add it into your ganache. I'm going to add in 6 tablespoons or 90 milliliters of whipping cream, which I'm just going to warm up in the microwave real quickly so I can add it to ganache. Oh God, who knew that whipping cream smells so bad so quickly? It's only like a month before it expires? Like, what is wrong with whipping cream these days? Fingers crossed that it still works out and it doesn't taste poisonous. Microwave your cream for around 45 seconds or so until the cream is nice and hot. But not too hot because you do not want your chocolate to scorch now, do we? But I might have overdone it. I mean, at least you're still putting the cream inside. I'm adding in the cream nice and slowly. And just mix to combine. Yes, I know you're supposed to let the chocolate sit for a bit in the warm cream before you emulsify it, but I've had really bad luck with doing so. And so I just like to mix mine in almost immediately, and I've had better luck emulsifying it that way. So that's why we're doing it immediately instead of waiting 5 minutes to mix it. And then the chef had the gall to say that my ganache has been split. It's like, excuse me, I've been making ganaches since basically pretty much since I started baking like 4 years ago, and none of my ganaches have come out split or anything like that. So it's like, maybe it's just you just trying to be a bitch to me or something, because I've now done it by hand before and it's turned out just as fine. And it's looking like it's coming out to be nice and smooth. You just have to have faith in me, chef. Why do you have to be such a, a big meanie to me all the time? No wonder I didn't graduate. See? Look at that. Nice and smooth. What'd I tell you? Sometimes mixing things nice and aggressively and being a little impatient really does pay out now, doesn't it? You can also use an immersion blender if that's what you would prefer to do when you're emulsifying this. But sometimes doing things by hand is just what's best, you know what I mean? Then add in your cooled pumpkin puree. Half a teaspoon of that wonderful and aromatic pumpkin spice. And 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. 1 teaspoon of this nice and strong espresso that I have here. Add all of that in there. This is going to be nice and strong, just the way I like my coffee. And emulsify all of this together. Again, if you had an immersion blender, this would be much easier to emulsify, and also the chocolate would be much more smoother. But if you're doing it by hand, this can also work too. But just keep in mind that it may split, like there's a chance of it splitting, so just be very vigorous with it, like so. Very, very vigorous. And silly me forgot to add in a pinch of salt. And now I have a spoon. I don't even know why I have a spoon. I'm too lazy to wash out the spatula again, so I'm just gonna emulsify with this. Now, because this ganache is way too runny to be used inside of the macarons filling, we're just going to cover this up real quickly and chill it in the fridge for about an hour until it's nice and firm enough to pipe in the middle, but not too firm because you are not actually able to pipe it. So let's cover this up. So tight. And we'll see you in an hour, buddy. So the custard has been chilling for around 2 hours, so it's now time to make the buttercream for it. I'm just going to give it a quick stir before I add in the butter cubes. Now I'm going to add in the unsalted butter cubes in 4 installments, and I'm just going to mix it until incorporated. So I'm adding in 113 grams of unsalted butter to this. Mix it. Add in some more butter. I think this should be good. Nice and thick, and it's not curdled. So this buttercream is ready to go. Then add in your 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. And just mix to combine with the buttercream. Then add the buttercream to the piping bag that has been fitted with a Wilton 1M star tip, or preferably a smaller star tip if you can't find one. I'm just using the 1M since that's the only one I have, and that's also the only one I can find, so I'm just working with what I have here. Now let's see if these are cool enough to be lit. Yep, we can pop them off nice and carefully. And these are ready to be filled. Make sure you match the macaron shells to its correct size so that the sandwiches are even and they're not all in different shapes. You want them to be as uniform as possible, exactly like this. For what it's worth, I don't think they're going to be exactly the same, so I'm just matching them up to ones that are as similar to them as possible, just so it can at least salvage them. So it looks like there's still some leftover macaron batter left in this piping bag, so I'm just going to quickly finish these up before calling it a night. I mean, we already know that we failed these macarons because they have no feet, so what's the worst that can happen with these ones? I mean, we just know for the next time that we just have to not overfold our macaronage and just do better on them, to be honest, you know what I mean? On the plus side, these macarons are still going to be delicious regardless, and I'm still going to eat them. I'm still going to enjoy them. I still think they look good despite the no feet situation and all that. Everybody makes mistakes. I mean, some people take 6 macarons to get it perfect, some people take 20, so it's all about luck and skill, I guess. And just give these another little dusting. It is now time to sandwich these beauties. So let's just take a couple here to get started. Take each half and just carefully flip it over. And then I'm going to fill it with some of the German buttercream. Just very, very small amount. Gotta have to make some room for the ganache filling after all, right? And pipe each of these sandwiches with a little bit of ganache. There we go. Not too much now. And we carefully sandwich them together, gently, just like that. That's it. And once all the macarons have been filled, we're just going to add it to our container so that they can chill overnight before we can finally devour these beauties. Shoot! Looks like we're out of buttercream. Time to make yet another batch. Doing this by hand this time so that I don't wake up my aunt and get her upset again. I really hope that this works out. Success! Looks just as smooth as if I had used a hand mixer to do this. Looks just as smooth and a bit lighter than the first batch, I guess. And my macarons are saved. Well, at least the filling is anyways. Just remember to double the buttercream amounts that I had stated earlier, just so you have the right amount for your macarons. Now we add the finishing touch with the little caramel drizzle on top. There we go. Add a bit of sea salt or fleur de sel to these cookies. Not too much because I know how much my mom and aunt don't like salt in their cookies or anything. And the macarons are finally completed. No, seriously though, who knew that making subpar macarons would be a lot of hard work? Oh man, seriously though, it took a lot out of me. I'm like so exhausted. I just can't wait to eat them. Man, am I exhausted. But you have to admit that these macarons don't actually look that bad. Though they are missing the feet and aren't smooth on top and are a little misshapen, you have to admit that these could have turned out a lot worse, right? I mean, at least they look edible, right? What do you guys think? Speaking of edible, I am going to take one of the more uglier looking macarons for a little taste test. You know the term ugly delicious? Well, these macarons are it. Not only do they taste almost like the pumpkin spice lattes that you get from Starbucks, but these are creamier as well. Kind of like as if they were to be like the creme version of the frappuccinos that you would get from there. Flavors are spot on. And though these macarons are far from perfect in terms of appearance, the outstanding flavor more than makes up for it. And there you have it, pumpkin spice macarons. Yes, I know it took us quite a bit to get us from start to finish, but you know, macarons are quite a finicky beast after all, and they don't take too kindly to doing things haphazardly. You need tender love and care in order to perfect macarons, and also a lot of patience too. And also a lot of practice too, I guess, but then again, if I can even get these right the 6th time around, while others can get them perfect the 1st time around, then what real chance do I have here? So I'd even argue that luck also plays a factor when it comes to making perfect macarons. I don't know, what do you guys think? Do you think luck has a role when it comes to making perfect macarons? Or do you need to have a certain skill set? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed today's macaron tutorial, despite the not so perfect appearance, but you're still a huge fan of pumpkin spice regardless, please give this video a like and let me know how your macarons turned out. Should you give this recipe a try? And who knows, maybe your macarons will turn out even better than mine did. And if you're like me and you're not feeling super confident when it comes to making macarons, don't worry, I have another recipe coming up that also features pumpkin spice, which is much easier to make than these macarons shown here. So look out for that video coming soon. Share this video so that others can give the pumpkin spice latte macarons a try, and also give them something to laugh and point and gawk at whenever they see me attempt to make these macarons and feel horribly at them. And if you enjoy the baking content that I do on here, and you don't mind a little self-deprecating humor from time to time, as well as a little sprinkling of educational tidbits, please subscribe to my channel and ring that notification bell to be notified whenever I make a new baking tutorial or a short. And who knows, you might actually learn something from me, despite the fact that I'm not some sort of master chef or anything like that. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Both usernames are Tiff's Patisserie, and the full written recipe to today's pumpkin spice latte macarons will be on my website, tiffspatisserie.wordpress.com. The link to that is in the description box down below. And until next time, you guys, stay safe out there, peace out, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Actually, you know what? I am going to take a few of these ugly delicious macarons to savor for myself. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye!